Okay, our next task is going to be to add a component user interface library, and we're going to be using Bootstrap for our styling for this application. But to help us out a bit, we're going to be using an Angular component library that gives us the Bootstrap functionality, but in an Angular kind of way. And we're going to be using ngx Bootstrap to do this. And let's take a look at the Get Started and some of its documentation, because this is one of the things that is a third-party library, and currently it's compatible with Angular 17. And I don't think they're the fastest to get things up and running with the different versions of Angular, but I can guarantee this works just fine with Angular 17. As at May 2024, I can't guarantee at the time of recording whether it's compatible with Angular 18 when you come to view this training course. So once again, I'd highly recommend sticking with Angular 17 for this training course, unless I've added a call out earlier on to say that this is fully compatible with Angular 18. So anyway, let's take a look at compatibility since I'm talking about that. And they're a bit slow to update their documentation as well, because they're talking about ngx Bootstrap on version 11. In the navbar up here, it's on version 12, and they specify Angular 16 in the compatibility guide. So it doesn't look like we can trust this documentation fully on what they're saying here, because they haven't listed version 12, but based on their numbering system, I think we can be fairly confident if ngx Bootstrap version 10 is compatible with Angular 15, version 11 is compatible with Angular 16, then I guess we can make the assumption that version 12 is going to be compatible with Angular 17. So I would imagine, based on this numbering system, although there's no guarantees, that version 13 would be compatible with Angular 18. So if you're not seeing that, then I'm pretty sure you're going to run into at least installing issues with this. So let's go back and taking a look at the getting started and what we need to do. Now, I'm going to warn against this as well, because this is one of the biggest problems, is using Angular schematics to install third-party packages. It's not worth the effort nowadays, because this is the one thing that third-party developers are the slowest to catch up on, is using the Angular schematics way of installing things into our projects. They can be good because, for example, when we do install this, if we do it the manual way, then we need to add certain things to our application to get the functionality to work, as well as the npm install. Using the schematic, then it could take care of all of that work for us, but it's more trouble than it's worth. And I'm going to demonstrate a more guaranteed way to get this up and running and working in the first go. So we're going to install ngx Bootstrap. Because we're going to do it the manual way, we also need to add the Bootstrap CSS. And when I'm talking about Bootstrap, I'm making a presumption you've heard of what this is, but just to be completely clear, Bootstrap is a CSS framework invented by the guys at what used to be known as Twitter, and they released this as kind of open source project that provides utility classes and various other elements, functional elements, to do various things with HTML without writing or needing to write all the CSS from scratch. It's been around for what feels like forever. And if we take a look at some of the components inside here, we have various elements that we can use, such as, let's pick on drop-downs because we'll use that fairly early on, and take a look at the examples. Then it gives us functionality that we can utilize in our application. And this version of Bootstrap would be based on using normal JavaScript code if we use Bootstrap just as it is, but we'd like to use the Angular version of this, because Angular comes with change detection as part of the framework, and if we use Angular components rather than plain old JavaScript components, then we know that Angular is going to be able to track the changes of the things that we're using. So we do typically favor Angular components where they're available, rather than plain old JavaScript third-party components if we can. So let's go ahead and install this, and we'll go back to VS Code and open up the terminal, and let's find a spare tab, which I do not have at the moment. That looks bad, but I'm sure it's just while I'm writing code changes, then hot reloading is going to run into errors as I'm typing in bad code. So as long as it's good at the bottom, that's all we really are concerned about. If you notice lots of red inside here, and I'm just going to open up a third tab for my terminal, and please be careful about where you install npm packages. We need them to be installed in the client project, not in our solution project. They have to be installed at this level. I'll try and remember to remind you every time we install a package into our client application that we need to be at this folder. So in order to install this, we're going to say npm install, and we need ngx bootstrap. We also need bootstrap, and we also want to install fontawesome so that we've got some icons to work with as well. Now, when it comes to the ngx bootstrap, then please do be careful about which version of Angular you are working with. This does seem to be one of those component libraries where you are going to run into problems if the version that you're using isn't compatible with the version of Angular that you're using. So I know, for example, I'm using Angular 17, and I know that version 12 is compatible with that version of Angular. So I'm just going to make a point of adding the @12 to the version of ngx bootstrap I'm going to install here. Bootstrap and fontawesome are really just CSS libraries, so they don't really matter. But the Angular stuff in ngx bootstrap, I do want to take a bit more care with. So I'm just going to add @12 to that one and let it go ahead and do its thing. Now, just adding this part here, just in case you are using Angular 18, the course has been re-recorded for Angular 17, but just as I got around to finishing the recording for Angular 17 and editing the videos, of course, Angular 18 has been released because Angular releases a new version every 6 months. Now, can you use this course with Angular 18? Yes, absolutely. But as Angular 18, at the time of recording, this very particular update has literally just been released, then in order to get ngx bootstrap to work without errors when you run npm install, you will need to do something here. Up until the point where ngx bootstrap has been updated to the next version, which will be compatible with Angular 18. That can take a few weeks to a month after Angular 18 has been released. So if the latest version of Bootstrap or ngx bootstrap is still version 12, which is the one that I'm using in this version, I've got the ngx bootstrap at version 12. If I hover over this, this is the latest version. If it's on ngx 13, then you should be able to use this without doing what I'm about to demonstrate here, and that will be fine. But if the latest version is still 12 at the time you're watching this video, then inside your package.json, just add a section called overrides, and this one is for later on in the course, the ng2 file upload. So you don't need that one for now, that's going to be covered anyway, but what you will need is to add overrides and then add this code here that I'm highlighting, and just make sure you add this. What this does is it sets the peer dependencies of ngx bootstrap to what you're currently using in your Angular project. And just add this and then run npm install again, and you should be able to use this with Angular 18 without any issues. I have done a quick test of this, it does seem to work fine. So please do that if you've already decided to use Angular 18 and that's what you're using for this training course. Everything else stays the same. All of the code we write is bang up to date using Angular 17, and it's equally valid in Angular 18. And once this has installed, then we need to make a couple more changes to our project as well. One of the things we need to change is the angular.json file. Inside our project we have the angular.json. And I mentioned earlier on in our styles array, and also be careful where you specify this. Inside build, underneath build, we have a styles array, but there's also a styles array inside the test section, and if you add it here, it's not going to work. So we do need to be specific about which styles array we add this to. And just above the styles, because ordering in cascading style sheets does matter, as it cascades. So I'm going to add another element, and I'm going to specify node_modules as where this is going to be installed is inside our node modules folder. And let's just be completely clear about this. So inside here, node modules, whenever we install a package, or that package's dependencies, then this gets added into this node modules folder. It's a very big folder. And if I scroll down to where we've got our NGX bootstrap stuff, then inside here we're looking for, and in fact we don't need this yet, we'll come back to this later when we take a look at the date picker, because the only CSS we need from here is for the date picker, but we're not there yet. So let's just take a look at where we actually need to get the CSS from, which is going to be bootstrap. And inside this folder, inside the dist folder, inside the CSS folder, then we have our bootstrap style sheets, and we're going to use one of these inside our styles array. And specifically we need the bootstrap.min.css. So we need to make sure the path is accurate, that we use bootstrap dist css bootstrap.min.css. So dist-css/bootstrap.min.css. Fairly obviously, if you've got typos in this, then it's not going to find the file, and you'll get the appropriate error when you try and start the application. And I'll also do the same just for the fontawesome one as well. Node modules //awesome/font-css/min.css, and add the comma afterwards and to make sure everything is fine. The easy way to check to see if you've made any typos at this point is to simply restart your Angular application. So I'll go to the client folder, I'll stop the app, and we'll need to do this anyway. Whenever we change the angular.json file, we do have to restart our Angular app. But this will tell us very quickly if we've got any typos, and I'll say ngserve, and sure enough, I've got a typo. Brilliant. So what did I do wrong there? Oh, I forgot to put the actual bootstrap folder in front of dist. But that serves as a fine example that typos are relevant in this one. So I'll specify bootstrap/dist, and that should be what we're looking for. So good. Let me stop the application again, and I'll say ngserve, press return, and this time we get success. And we should see a visual change as well, because Bootstrap comes with its own fonts. And if I go back to the browser and go to the client, then we'll see that we've got a different font than we had before for our H1 there. And another change I want to make before we finish this section is to run our client application over HTTPS as well. Now, doing this is not essential, but I'll talk about that in the next lesson.